This is my legacy too. You're 100% right. The 21 years at ESPN and the 4 Emmys, those are nice to have on the resume, and I look back at them fondly and had a lot of great times. But that was for me, right? And you get to a point in your life, I think most people do, where you go, all right, enough about me. What more is there?
This is Entrepreneurs the Playbook, where I give you access each week to the world's greatest athletes and executives about their personal and professional playbook and what has made them champions on and off the field. This is the Playbook.
Tell me about the curriculum and the program, because it is unique. You have this monthly type of curriculum. It's online and in person. It's tremendous. Can you give a little bit of insight on how this works? Because I think in more professions, this is for Entrepreneur Magazine and Entrepreneur, they need to know, like, how can we combine education with practical, create minor leagues?
Yeah, and that was a big part of the hiring process for me, as I've hired 5 so far of the 15 staff positions that I have to fill. We have 32 courses in the program. 15 of them are original, 17 of them are shared with other programs. And so I thought it'd be very difficult to find people who've lived it, but then can teach it and want to teach it. And so far it's been much easier than I thought, which has been really rewarding. But the students come through, and I'll just focus on the 15 core classes that they take with us. We try to walk them through the progression of teaching them the things they're going to know to do the job. So I put them on the set at the end of their first month more for just the experience of getting to do it than any expectation that they could really do it. And I would tell people all the time, I'm not going to ask you to go hit off a Randy Johnson without going into the cage first, right? But it did occur to me that there's some value in it. So at the end of the first month, or the first class, the intro to sportscasting class, they have logged a game, cut a highlight from that game, and then written a lead-in and a tag, and they're going to present the highlight. And just the experience for them to sit on a set and do that. We were having them do that in the classroom. I said, you know what, let's put them in the studio, because they've earned that right, for starters. And I think it's really neat for them at the end of that first month to send something home to mom and dad and say, look what I did this month. And it looks nice because they're in the studio. So, but we build them up through that. We have two writing courses. We have 3 vocal training courses. We have an interviewing course. We have a diversity in modern media course, because diversity in the newsroom and in the sports landscape is so important. We have one class that's advanced reporting and practice, which is the closest we get to journalism. That's not a word that we throw around, because that's really not what we're teaching. And I think in some respects with sportscasting, that word scares people off. So we're not really touting ourselves as a journalism school, although there are plenty of journalism principles you learn along the way. We have a couple of technology courses, and then when we get to the last 3 months, you're in our studio, hopefully doing 5 or 6 shows a month.
Wow.
And so for them to get those opportunities and just get those reps and doing shows. And so we talked about, maybe you decide you're not going to be on air and you want to produce. Great, I need someone to produce these shows that we're going to do at the end of the month, right? Or I need people to edit the highlights or whatever it is. So it's really just piling the building blocks one after another with the practical experience and doing the hands-on stuff. There's not a lot of theory, it's a lot of doing. And so it could be something as simple as, in the interviewing class, we're going to do an activity today, and last night after the game, Coach Belichick said X, Y, and Z. Let's break down the questions that were asked, and then all of you have 5 minutes to come up with 3 questions of your own, and then you're going to ask them to the instructor, whatever. But you're going to do it in front of a camera, because we want you performing in front of a camera as often as possible. There's just so many different ways you can replicate the job. One thing we'll do in one of our classes is they're going to practice doing stand-ups. Well, we're going to do it in the classroom, right? But then we're going to go do it standing on the side of the road where there's traffic. And how does that impact your voice in vocal training? And are you going to start yelling all of a sudden because all of a sudden it's loud? No, you can't. You have a microphone in your hand. It works. But you do have to talk a little bit louder, right? So wherever we can create anything they might experience, we do that every step of the way throughout the program.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. One of the things, I got to see some of the piloted sizzle reels in the kids, is one of the lessons I saw that you just can't teach other than in a program like this is, what do you do when you screw up?
Yeah.
Because Sage and Dan were up there, they screw up every day.
Yeah.
And yet, what do? Do you self-deprecating humor? Do you slide past it? And everyone has different techniques, which you coach people on.
Yeah.
But it's a really important part of what you teach. Now, the most obvious question that most people ask you is, hey, how do I get my son or daughter to be a sportscaster? What advice would you give? I'm going to ask you a different question, because I think it might be more revealing. What advice would you give yourself, your 21-year-old self? What advice would you give yourself, if you could?
Yeah, it's funny because Dan mentioned he had the the disc jockey bit and mowed greens, and that's an uncharted path. Well, that's exactly what I did. My junior year in high school, I had a radio show in Greenwich, Connecticut on the town radio stations on Saturday nights, the Saturday Night Rock Party from 7 to midnight. And pre-internet and music in your pocket, my friends would go to the parties and they would call in and ask for the requests, and it was awesome for me. I was hosting the parties, right? And so I knew at a very early age that somehow, some way, this is what I was going to do. I met my wife at Rollins College, and I only half-heartedly joke with people that had the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting existed then, I might not have gone to Rollins, you know. And my parents went to Rollins, my brother went to Rollins, but there was.
I might have not gone to law school. That's
there just wasn't anything like this, and I knew what schools you could go to if you wanted to kind of get into it a little bit. And I came to Rollins mostly because it's a beautiful campus, and my parents went there, and I wanted to get out of the Northeast. But as soon as I got here, I went to the radio station and said, what kind of opportunities are there for me? And I started doing the broadcasting of their sporting events. So I think there are a lot of people out there who have a good idea of what they want to do. And that's what's great about Full Sail. You know, I like to say, I think other people here say it too, you come here, you find your tribe. Everybody's here for the same reason. You could go be a journalism major somewhere else, but you and I might have different objectives under that degree. So the 21-year-old Gus, I think, already knew for sure what he wanted to do, but wasn't sure how to get there. And I did go down and knock on the door at Channel 2 and say, hey, do you guys take interns? Only because that was the only answer that I really had. But the 18-year-old Gus probably would have gone to the Dan Patrick School if he knew that it existed, because I knew somehow, some way, sports and broadcasting was in my future, because I just loved both of them from as long as I could remember.
Yeah, I think too, the Full Sail University Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting also not only finds your tribe, but it allows you to find your frequency.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really important for anything that you're going to do. And you found your frequency being a producer,
yep.
Even though you still, you know, like everyone else, coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah.
But in the end, you know, this is truly your legacy. And
sure.
with Dan, and the fact that all of these people, you have relationships and they respect you. And Dan had talked about respect as well. If you could give one gift, this is the last question, one gift to the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting, what would that gift be?
It's going to be the people that I hire, because this is my legacy too. You're 100% right. The 21 years at ESPN and the 4 Emmys, those are nice to have on the resume, and I look back at them fondly and had a lot of great times. But that was for me, right? And you get to a point in your life, I think most people do, where you go, all right, enough about me. What more is there? And so I want to build this out and make it as great as Dan hopes it can be, as great as Full Sail hopes it can be. So in order to do that, I have to find the right people to be in the classroom. I don't teach. I go to the classes, and the kids come to me on the side, and I'll look at their tapes and I give them feedback. But I am finding people to teach them the hardcore stuff and the specific stuff. And if I find all the right people and we're giving them all the right messages and all the right feedback, they'll be as prepared as they can possibly be. So that'll be the gift, that they're going to come here and go, that was everything I hoped it would be.
That's awesome. Well, Gus Ramsey is living proof that you can be kind to your future self. And that's what the Full Sail University Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting is. And you are really impacting a tremendous amount of lives today, but more importantly, I can see exponentially in the future. So thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate your time, Gus, and everything that you're doing. Anything I can do to be of service. I love this place. Yeah. I'm a huge fan now, and I do have a lot of relationship capital as well that I'm going to bring down here, as well as give it the exposure that it deserves. So Dan and you should be really proud.
There's yet to be a person who's come to Full Sail who doesn't get that look in their eye.
Yeah.
You know, once you're here, it's an incredible place.
No matter what they say, you got to come down here, because no matter what you read or they say about it, once you're here, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well, this is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneur, the Playbook.